Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining today's investor webinar. I'm joined here today by Ocean Farmer. We've got Ewan and Matt here on the webinar today. I'm really thrilled to be able to give everybody this opportunity to, of course, learn more about this interesting business and ask your questions about this offer and this opportunity as the business enters its next phase of growth. So just to explain today's structure, we've got a presentation which is already up and ready to go. And we're going to be taking about the first 15 to 20 minutes to go through this presentation. And then the rest of the time on this webinar will be used as a Q&A. So I'd really like to invite everybody to ask as many questions as and when they come into your head using the Q&A feature itself. If I haven't already introduced myself, I'm Robin. I'm representing Birchal here today, and I'd love to throw over to you guys to introduce yourselves and run through your presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Robin, and g'day everybody that's tuning in. I'm Ewan McCash. I'm a marine scientist. I'm an oyster farmer, and I'm the co-founder of Ocean Farmer. And I've got Matt Parry here with us. He's our CFO and COO. Do you want to give a bit of background, Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Thanks, Ewan. Yeah, look, I come from a business background, I suppose. Well, Ewan's the entrepreneur and founder. I get to help grow the business and put some structures in place, and it's a great ride, guys. But I'll tell you a bit more about that later.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Well, I'll just jump into the presentation. I'm going to run through the slides and just try and go through fairly quickly, but also with enough sort of pace so you guys can follow. And then look forward to answering all your questions at the end. Straight up, Ocean Farmer, our mission is to grow the farms that we really believe will change the world. So regenerative ocean farms, we're talking oysters, we're talking mussels and seaweed. The executive team is myself, James Horton, my co-founder, is CTO, and Matthew Parry, who you've just met. And Ocean Farmer, I mean, to put it in context, we are sort of, so put it in context, we're working in these sort of global problems. This idea that we need to not just grow more food, but grow a more develop a more sustainable food system, which I believe regenerative ocean farming has a huge role to play. Also, ocean ecosystem recovery. So we've suffered the ocean suffered a staggering loss of natural oyster reefs, seaweed, and mangroves over the past couple of centuries. So we play a role in actually addressing that. And of course, the big one, which is climate change and the global temperature rise. So the need for us as a global population to try and reverse that trend. So ocean farming solves these big global problems on a small local footprint. It's been proven that shellfish farming and seaweed farming actually helps mitigate nutrient pollution. They soak up nitrogen and phosphorus out of the water column. Of course, oysters actually filter the water as well. It's been shown that shellfish and seaweed farms provide habitats and support fish stocks by being a nursery for those animals. And of course, it also plays a role in mitigating against local climate change, including ocean acidification and mitigating against storm surges and other sort of coastal erosion. Utilizing less than 0.15% of the ocean waters could outproduce the global demand for seafood by a staggering 100 times. So we can grow a lot of food in not much space out there in the ocean. A 10% increase in seaweed grown worldwide would generate more than $5.8 billion in crop sales and capture more than 3.4 million tons of carbon per year. And a 20% increase in oyster farm investment generates more than 2.3 billion in farm gate sales, and again captures 5,000 tons of carbon per year. So huge impact from growing regenerative crops. Our role as Ocean Farmer is in this sector is that we're the world's first operating system for ocean farming. We grow regenerative ocean farms by optimizing their operations and enabling access to finance. So there's the two main reasons ocean farmers struggle to grow. One is inefficient farm operations. So that's what we've solved with our farm operations app, but it really recognises the fact that wherever you're farming, this includes, you actually have to build up a sort of unique farm practice. And that's especially true when you're operating and farming in the water. And that unique farm practice and, you know, how to grow something in a certain location is very hard to standardize and impossible actually, and therefore hard to scale. So then making those operations more efficient is a real challenge for farmers. And then of course, the lack of access to capital. So these farms, you know, everywhere I go in the world, every farmer I talk to, we all have the same problem. We just cannot get the capital we need to grow. Huge demand for our product, huge positive impact, both socially and environmentally, but we just can't get the capital to grow. So ocean farmers' role is that, you know, we can capture the data that enables investment in the best farmers on industry-leading farms, and we'll talk more about how we do that in the slides. And probably really importantly, probably most importantly, it also gives the farmers themselves, you know, back time by making their operations more efficient, by enabling to capture what they do and delegate, you know, responsibility, scale up farms. But, you know, it gives them the opportunity to build more efficient and resilient and sustainable farm practice. And I think resilience is going to be a really key, you know, strength moving forward as we have continued climate change. What is Ocean Farmer? Well, it consists of an app that farmers use to navigate around their farms and schedule and record their activities and their stock inventory. It's a dashboard that takes the data outside from the app, does the sort of standardization and sort of the hard work in the background, and then pushes it back in the dashboard that gives farmers insight into their farm operations. We're trialing sensors and other sort of technology that we can hook in to help farmers become more operationally efficient and de-risk these crops. And importantly, Ocean Farmer is now giving farmers access to like tailored finance solutions. Our first product called Farmr is enabling farmers to expand their farms with gear. Give you an idea of what the kind of insights we can get from Ocean Farmer data. We can see in real time, you know, the stock inventory and value. We can see how a farm is optimizing their gear and their farm capacity, and we can also see their farm activity. Farmr, we can talk about this, and I'm sure people are going to have a heap of questions about this because it's a really exciting aspect of Ocean Farmer and what we've just launched in the last 2 months. But a quick overview. So Farmr, it's not really finance. It's actually sort of tech-enabled share farming. Why it works? Well, it works because it's tailored to each farm's growth cycle and seasons. We keep the terms short, like within 12 months. And it's progressive. So it enables a farm to expand or upgrade their infrastructure in line with their own workflow, their own seasons and operational needs. How it works, it's fairly simple. Ocean Farmer provides the gear and the crop. The farmer uses their expertise and resources to actually farm that crop through to sale. And once sold, the proceeds from the crop are split, with the farmer taking ownership of the gear. What's really exciting about this is just how much impact we can have. Like, for example, one deal that we're assessing at the moment in the Gulf of America, $160,000 worth of investment onto that farm will actually provide $300,000 in crop sales within 5 months. So that'll enable that farmer to grow their farm by nearly 50% in that time frame. It also, with such a short growth cycle, it means we can actually time that investment between hurricane cycles. So we can grow that farm, but we can also de-risk the funding, outside of those key risks to the farm operations. I'm really passionate, really proud, and really passionate about our social and environmental impact. You know, what Ocean Farmer does is help farmers grow these regenerative crops and just do what they do best. And we can have direct impact on that. So a great example is like every 3 hectares of oyster farm in New South Wales, Australia creates 1 full-time job. It generates $346,000 in sales. That's more than 630,000 oysters per annum. You know, those oysters will filter 5.4 million litres of water per annum. They'll capture 23 tonnes of carbon in their shells, and they'll capture 130 kilos of nitrogen per annum in their meat, and the job they do filtering out nutrients from the water. The total addressable market. So it's massive. You know, we've got the Ocean Farm software as a service, and we've got the farm finance, and those two combined is $2.8 billion in addressable market per year. I've been talking for a few slides now, so I might hand over to Matt to talk on our business model, and then I'll come back and talk about the competition.
Thanks, Ewan. So everyone, as Ewan said, we're super excited. So that $2.8 billion a year, to put that in another way, the Nature Conservancy in America estimated that $150 to $300 billion of infrastructure is needed by 2030. So go to the next slide, Ewan. So how does that all, and the second reason we're super excited is the business model is actually really simple. And this is something, it didn't just happen by accident. We've went through several iterations, several proof of concepts, but what we've ended up with is quite a simple business model. So there's two key parts to it: Ocean Farmer revenues and the asset manager revenue. So Ocean Farmer does monthly subscriptions, and it does data license fees to the asset manager. The asset manager then has its own fees, and it does a profit share on the crop sale. Now that profit share is really important because some of that goes back to the farmer. And so it's really important to us to make sure we're incenting the farmer to minimise mortality and increase resilience and increase size of the crop and increase value of the crop. So it's a really simple model that we've come up with. And where that's significant, if you go to the next slide, Ewan, there's some key numbers here. Now, 2,500 customers, it's purely aspirational, everyone. So please don't take this as gospel. And in fact, the 400,000 is aspirational as well, but it gives you a feel for where we can start to go with a really simple model. The other thing that comes out of the model is about 14% margin on this. So at the point at which we get 2,500 customers and $400,000 per annum per year, we've got about $1 billion worth of assets under management, and we're bringing in fees across both the SaaS and the farm finance of about $140 million a year. So it's big. It's about 14%, as I said. Then you look at the traction and you go, okay, we've currently got 73 customers, and you don't think that's too much. But now go back to the top. If all those 73 customers had farm finance at about 400,000 each, it's a massive business. Now, once again, we're not going to get 400,000 in year one. We probably won't get it in year two, but that's where we're heading. We start these customers small, we grow them over the next couple of years, make sure that they're able to chunk it down, make sure they're using Ocean Farmer effectively to keep allowing their operations to be more efficient, allow them to scale, become scalable and repeatable. So that's where the tech comes back in. But once again, if you then look at the traction we've already got 58 farm finance expressions of interest worth more than $56 million. And we've already got 3 deals that we've successfully completed. And that's how we know we've got our 14% margin at the moment. So as I said, we're super excited about where we are and where we're going. Hand it back to you, Ewan.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. And Matt, I'll just ask a question. How many of that $56 million, how much of that do we need to put away, I guess, in the next 12 months in order to meet our targets?
Fraction of it. Not allowed to talk about targets in a virtual meeting, but if we got anywhere near 50 customers, we're well ahead of our target.
So getting back to the competition, Ocean Farmer is the only software solution that works across the entire regenerative ocean farming sector. And we are the only one growing the sector with the farm finance. This competitive seascape really is trying to give you an indication of how far the theory behind Ocean Farmer and the way we approach farm operations is differentiated from the competition. And to be honest, there's not that much competition out there. They're mostly fish farming software. There's a few shellfish farming software companies, but no one that can no one out there that actually can deliver both seaweed, mussels and oysters, and also do the farm finance. Yeah, so we're a long way ahead of our competitors. Again, there's not many software out there that well, the software, our competition tends to be sector specific and even regional. So oysters or mussels, not oysters, mussels and seaweed. There's increasing amount of farms out there that are doing multi species farms, so multi-trophic. So we can actually address that market share. There's no other competitors that use a GPS map. So Ocean Farmr is like Google Maps for your farm. It's very intuitive and easy to use, even for the saltiest, sea farmers. There's no other competitors offering finance solutions. And as I said, Ocean Farmr is the only solution designed around the capture activity, crop, and inventory, enabling us to identify the best practice and high-performing farms and farmers, and de-risking investment in ocean farming. So, one of our key competitive advantages is the way we solve the problem for farmers enables us to then de-risk the funding of those farms. This is this terrific statement from the Nature Conservancy that Matt said earlier. So by 2030, the aquaculture sector will require an additional 150 to 300 billion in capital investment to expand production infrastructure to meet the projected demand for growth. And I think that's what's so exciting about where we are now with Ocean Farmr. We started with a farm operations app to make farmers more efficient. We're now taking those first steps in the farm finance, and there's already, we're getting validated. There's a huge demand for farm finance, and we're the first we're the first in the market, and we've got a great product. Okay, so we do see Ocean Farmr as being on trend. We sit right in the middle of supply chain digitization, agri-tech efficiencies, and farm finance. The companies in these boxes are all companies that are growing, that are getting investment, and are identified as sector changing and industry changing companies. Investment and backing. So we've got the backing of Moana as one of our biggest companies, one of our biggest customers. They were a foundation customer and invested $100,000 last year in our company. We've also been accepted into and received $400,000 in accelerating commercialisation grants from the Australian government. We've previously been invested in and participated in the Hatch Accelerator and invested from their fund. And excitingly, we've just recently also been accepted into and invested in by Catapult. So Catapult is an impact venture fund, an accelerator out of Norway. I've only just returned from there. And these guys are high profile and have a large fund, which we expect will follow on, if not from them, but definitely from one of their associated LPs. From participating in the Catapult program, we can expect as much as €300,000 in investment into Ocean Farmr. So Ocean Farmr, we've got an active customer base. We've got a clear vision and strategy. We now have more than $60 million in deals. I've just checked, I updated this earlier. From our pipeline, and our market is ready to expand. We're setting our sails and we're inviting investors to join us as we expand globally, building on our farm operations tech, delivering on farm finance, and importantly, having that real measurable impact from growing these farms that will change the world. Thanks, Robin.
Fantastic, guys. Thanks very much for the presentation. Really, really exciting opportunity. And Matt, I do love your comment around not putting forecasts out there, of course. I think it goes, without being said to everybody who's tuned in here today, that, of course, that is a figure that you've very calculatedly sort of worked out and figured that you could achieve as a business. And I think that's really, really important to kind of state. But of course, it's a forecasted figure, and we probably won't go into too much detail on those in the offer document itself, but would love to open up to questions. I know we already have a couple, and one of them is very detailed, and considers quite a lot. So really keen to get into a lot more detail on the business itself. So I'll kick off with the first question from Tim, just in relation to the presentation. Are you talking dozen oysters when you're referring to those oyster numbers?
G'day, Tim. No, we tend to talk in pieces with oysters. So interesting enough, that's something we do for our farmers all over the world. Some farmers talk in dozens, some in pieces, some in bushels. So that's part of that's part of our sort of X factor in terms of configuring the application to suit the farm practice, is that we actually do collect the information in all these different sort of units, and then in the background we'll convert it back into pieces, so individual oysters.
Yeah, fantastic. Tim's already come in and said in New Zealand we talk dozen. Good to know. So yeah, that's awesome. John, thank you so much for your question here. I've seen very innovative products for financing cattle. How are you sourcing finance? And there's a couple of other questions, but I think I'll ask this in stages.
Matt, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. So it's slightly different depending on which jurisdiction, but we've got in Australia, let's start with Australia, we've got two primary funders at the moment. We've got high net worth individuals doing funding, plus we've also got a farming investment co-op that's investing in us. We're in discussion with a variety of people from home offices to VCs. It's all debt funded, I suppose, is the first thing I should have said. It's not part of this raise. We don't use the money from this raise to actually fund deals. We've got specific separate funders. We're currently offering them 1.25% a month interest, so it's debt only, to fund these deals. Over time, we expect that debt to come down. In the US, we're talking to family offices once again, and we've got a advisor who's actually sourcing through a number of different debt funders at the moment, VCs and the like. The intent would be, as we get big enough, to move to more traditional style funding. But that's over time. We're starting with the simple stuff. Let's get the personal offices involved. Let's get some of the larger organisations that are really looking forward to just some impact deals over 3 to 12 months on a debt basis, and go from there.
Oh, great answer. And are there discussions occurring for you to monetize the carbon capture in the shells of the oysters? And what is the average size of an oyster farm as well?
Yeah, so we see a huge opportunity in the, we call it the environmental credit market. So we are capturing that information as a farmer navigates around their farm, operating more efficiently and growing the animals. We're actually capturing that data in real time. And we do see that on our roadmap, is that we'll be able to capture value for the farmer in selling carbon, nitrogen, maybe even one day ecosystem services.
Yes. Yeah, fantastic. The carbon capture market, I mean, like it's so many people are really focusing on it at the moment. And I mean, you're perfectly positioned as a business, being able to collect data on that. That's fantastic for you. I mean, would you like to talk a little bit more about the carbon capture market and where it's going and what you're seeing?
I'll just make a comment before I hand over to Matt. What I'm really passionate about with Ocean Farmr is that when it comes to, is that what Ocean Farmr enables is the investment in is in the farmers that are out there already farming. Yeah. So there is literally thousands of passionate, experienced farmers out there that are farming, and what we can enable them to do is actually become more efficient and optimize what they do, and then with the farm to buy program, actually expand their farm operations. Yeah. And so, even by just optimizing a farm or expanding it by 20%, not to mention 50% or more, we're having huge impact with farmers who know what they're doing. And then when it comes to the carbon credit market and nitrogen, again, if we can create value for those farmers by getting them paid for the services they're doing, that's fantastic. Matt, did you want to make a comment about that?
Yeah, look, it's super early days from a carbon capture. If you look at the methodologies that have been proven, there really aren't that many of them on a worldwide basis. That said, I was in a conversation with Catapult last night, and we were talking about the measure of the carbon and the nitrogen. And they were super excited because we've been capturing this data for forever. And we've been talking about this data forever. And with a lot of their other people in the accelerator, organisations accelerator, they're only just starting to do it. So we're well ahead of that curve. Part of the reason we've gone with Catapult is that part of those early decisions were they talked to us about the possibility of blue bonds, which are the water version of green bonds, or social bonds that we can potentially use around the world. This is well down the track, guys, nowhere near in the short term. And then you sort of start to put a lot of this stuff together and you think, well, maybe there's things 5 years plus down the track where we can be starting to capture some of this data, maybe in developing countries on the app, and we can actually use carbon credits and different blue and social bonds to actually help pay some of these developing countries. So you've got lots of potential in the future, but once again, let's stick, as Ewan rightly says, let's stick with where we are. The opportunity at the moment, there's a target market of 109,000 regenerative aquaculture farmers. And if we make our aspirational target of 2,500 of them, we've got $1 billion a year market. So that's really where we're targeting in the short term, not the other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome answer. That's great to hear. Chris, thanks very much for your question. Hi, and thanks. What are we actually investing in? Are you shares in the company or a fund? Matt, I'm happy for you to take this one. I can take this one, but yeah, no.
Definitely shares in the company. Yeah. So Ocean Farmr is the core of everything. If we didn't have Ocean Farmr, you can't get the tech. Ocean Farmr effectively allows us to look into the water. We can see what farmers are doing. We can see the lines. We can see the baskets. We can see the activities. We've got the GPS. We actually know exactly where they are and what they're doing. Without Ocean Farmr, none of the farm finance can happen. Yeah. So this is absolutely an investment into Ocean Farmr to make this happen, which is why all the funding is for the infrastructure, and the crop is purely debt. It's completely separate to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question, Robin?
That absolutely perfectly answers the question, and I think you've done a great job of articulating where you're looking to get those funds from as well, because yeah, of course, in looking at what you're offering, there probably was a little bit of a hesitation as to exactly whether or not some of the funds from this round were going into that, but that is absolutely spot on in terms of the response to that. Yeah, that's great. So in regards to another question here that we have from Tim, you said that you take oysters as payment for gear. How does this work? I.e., do you find the market for these oysters? How do you set the projected value for them, and how do you sort of secure the loan?
Do you want to do this one, Ewan?
I can do some of it, and then you can jump in.
You kick off, and I'll do the rest.
So we're working with, we're using it with Ocean Farmr customers, so established farmers with established markets, and it's about progressively growing those farms. So we work with the farmer to understand what gear they want, and then make sure that we have a crop that we can, what crop they use, so we can actually seed that gear with a crop of a size that they can grow through and ultimately pay for the gear and return profit to both them and Ocean Farmr and the funder. So we in the first instance, no, we don't look for markets for that. The farmer would have a market for that. Generally, between our target markets, the US, Australia, US, New Zealand, UK, these farmers at the moment cannot supply demand. So there's plenty of demand for that. What was this? Yeah, so I guess so we work with established farms and we progressively grow them. So we start off with maybe a small amount of gear and a small amount of funding, and then as we equip that, we can continue to add more and more and more. Matt, do you want to take over? What have I missed?
Yeah. So I think the key there from my perspective is when you say take oysters for payment for gear, once again, you've got to go back to what we're trying to do. We actually, as the asset manager, own the oysters and own the crop. We're not a finance company where we start off, and let me go through the process. I think that might be the easiest way for Tim. So you talk to a farmer and you say to the farmer, look, we've looked at the app and we know you've got spare water. And let's be clear, I think the average spare water in New South Wales is 30 to 50%. So there's lots of spare water. We then look at the app and go, look, we know you're a good farmer. You're really consistent with your activities, and we know that your labour utilisation is good. You've got probably some spare labour utilisation. We know that your asset utilisation is pretty well maxed out. What if we buy some crop and we buy some infrastructure and put it on your farm, and we'll grow it, and you pay nothing up front, you pay nothing per month, and then at the end of 12 months, you get a profit share on the crop, and you can keep the infrastructure for the next 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
And that's the model. So it's not so much around lending money or selling, using crop as payment for gear. It's a genuine arrangement where we can help the farmer with the acquisition of assets, if you like, by them helping us grow the crop over a 3 to 12 month period. So that's sort of how it works. So how do we secure the loan? The asset manager secures the loan. The asset manager owns the crop, owns the infrastructure. So as the owner of it, they don't need to secure it. They already own it. It's a complex one, I know, Tim. I sort of hope that's answering it.
I think Tim, please do add another note or question if you'd like further clarification on any of that. But that's really good to hear in kind of understanding a little bit more about the model. Tim, yes, it does. Fantastic. That's really good to hear.
Perfect. Thank you.
I think even in understanding this model, and when you do go to one of these farms and you're kind of talking about these farmers' efficiencies, what are you finding as a business? And you've mentioned that this is really your goal. This is what you want to be able to do. You want to be able to help these operators become even more efficient. So you must get asked all the time, like, what are your average efficiency increases, and what do they look like? Perhaps even just an individual case where that has happened in the business, and they've just been able to use that data to completely revamp their operation and significantly increase production. Would be great to hear.
Yeah, that's a great question, Robin. So our farmers consistently report they spend 50% less time out on the water. And that's because with the Ocean Farmer app, they can be very targeted about where they're going and what they're doing. And if anyone that's worked on the water, or time on the water is saving time on the water is massive, because it's that's when you've got to prioritize what you do for the wind and the weather and the waves. So the other thing is, other farmers are saving time in terms of redundant time spent communicating redundant information. So by having a sort of operating system on their phone, they can record what they're doing. They don't need to have those conversations with their business partners or workers about, did you do that, or where do I need to go? So there's like 7 to 8 hours a week in time savings there in communication. Our data is showing that the most active users of Ocean Farmer are actually producing 20% more production based on their gear and asset use. So we know the data is telling us that Ocean Farmer users are actually more productive. And I think what's really probably interesting, worth comment, Matt, maybe I'll throw over to you, is when you talk from a farm to buy perspective about looking at those top performing farms, the trends we see in their data.
Yeah, data's key here. This is what Ocean Farmer gives us, and we've done several programs of analysis now. And one program of analysis compared all the customers and compared their activities and compared their outputs. And it was quite interesting that it's about consistency and efficiency to some extent, especially consistency. The more consistent farmers are using the Ocean Farmer app, the better they start to farm. And so we took some of those learnings from these top users, and they're all over the world, by the way. That's across 3 continents that information was taken. In lots of different conditions with lots of different type of oysters and lots of different equipment. So it's quite interesting. But then we've actually done some other stuff more recently, which is a different program of work, which says, let's work with some of the farmers who've already on farm to finance. And as we start to work with them, let's see what happens to the data. And as we start to work with them and as they start to use Ocean Farmr more, we can actually see the consistency of the activities and the correlation with the crop value actually increase. Both the activities increase, the consistency increases, and the overall performance of the farm, the operations of the farm increase. So we've now done it across several different types of programs, but no, it's really quite interesting. It really is something, if I put my CFO's hat on, it's something that's actively changing the way that farms operate to make them far more scalable. And that's where we know if we give these farmers, because they're using the app, if we give them the infrastructure, it's not going to drown them. We know they can do it. We know their farm is scalable. We know that they'll be able to take on the extra assets and the extra crop and actually do it really, really well.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, Robert, I just
carry on.
Yeah, what we're seeing, we are seeing this change in behaviour in farms. And we do believe, as Matt's saying, the data's there to show that once, especially when it comes to the farm to buy program, and once the ability to actually access finances on the long, we see these farmers start to change their behaviour. They actually start to actually use the app more, be more engaged with their own data, and and they're actually becoming more scalable and repeatable and more system sort of orientated. I had an interesting conversation with one farmer from South Australia, where I'd explained the farm to buy program, and I'm like, hey, yep, there's no collateral required, there's no repayments, and at the end of it, we'll even give you, you even get a profit share to actually receive these baskets, this gear. And he said, Ewan, it sounds too good to be true. What's the catch? And I said, well, the catch is we still need you to farm, and that's what's actually really valuable. And what we're capturing with Ocean Farmr is that you've spent, in this case, maybe a decade learning how to farm in your patch. And that's actually really valuable. And that's something that we can actually, that's what you're bringing to the deal. Is that we can't just put gear and oysters in the water and expect them to grow themselves. We can't throw money in the water and expect a return. So for you, to date, traditional banking has never valued that expertise. But with Ocean Farmr and with the data we capture, we can actually de-risk that funding. So it's really exciting for farmers to say, like, if you change your behavior, you start using the app more, if you capture what you do, well, we can grow your farm.
Yeah, interesting. I think the next question is, perfect as we're down this sort of line of business itself. Chris has asked, so is it right that you are currently paying 15% on the debt per annum, receiving 14% as the asset management fee, and then the return is 50% of the share of sale of product?
Yeah, there's a few other costs in there, Chris. So without wanting to go into the model, the shortcut is 14%, but there's clearly a longer version where we break out all the components and price them up. And I might add, it's slightly different for each farm. It's slightly different depending on the type of crop and the grow out cycle. And it's going to be different depending on the type of gear they want and the temperature of the water. There's so much. So each deal is going to be a slightly different margin, but the rule of thumb we work off is there's about a 14% gross margin to play with.
Yeah, right. Thanks. And this is also the perfect segue into the next question from Tim, who's asking what competitive advantage does Ocean Farmr offer in regards to offering finance above the traditional finance options? You've already started to go down that route, Ewan, by stating that the experience is valued. Does Ocean Farmr take any finance risk in facilitating the finance itself?
Yeah, of course. There's always risk.
So
there's things we can do to mitigate that risk, though, I suppose, is the key. There's a couple of interesting things that are starting to happen. So off the top, there's insurance. So we can insure some of the crop, we can insure some of the infrastructure. Something else that's starting to happen that we've noticed is if the farmers aren't buying it, if we're saying to the farmer, what infrastructure do you require? Rather than it being the cheapest, thinnest bit of rope, they'll actually provide a requirement which is a better piece of equipment that we end up putting in place. And it starts to make the farm more resilient. And so it actually is actively de-risking from some of these weather events that you might hear about. So look, insurance is the short way. There's lots of improvements from from the app itself and the operational improvements, but we've also noticed from some of the gear that people are starting to purchase that that's improving resilience as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And Lucas here is asking if there's any minimum investment requirement in terms of the dollar amount. This is usually a stage where a company is sort of just refining the terms of its offer leading up to the launch. But if you do have a figure set in mind, then of course, please feel free to share it.
I'm sorry, Lucas. I don't. I've just got off the plane from America at the moment. So that's one of the details I haven't got across with the team.
It will be in the offer document.
It will be in the offer document.
It will be in the offer document. Thanks, guys. And even to that, John here has asked if you're at liberty to discuss the capital raise, so the valuation, the amount that you want to raise, whether or not you have a cornerstone investor on board. Before I throw over to the guys, this will be in the offer document, and these are kind of the conditions that are being set as the company is ending its expression of interest campaign and leading up to the launch of its investment offer. So happy for you guys to add to that if you wish to.
Yeah, I would just say to John, if you haven't, you probably have, I'm sure, just express interest. The individuals express interest will get that offer document first. Exactly. And it's not that far off.
Exactly. So yeah, the offer itself is going to be launching the week after next, effectively, and all you need to do is express interest to invest. If you haven't already, in fact, when I do follow up with everybody after this and provide you with the webinar recording, I'll make sure to provide the link so that you can express interest to invest into the campaign itself. That's great. And Bobby here has asked a question around what percentage of crop sales go back to the farmer. Does second round of financing again include the dollars for seed for the next batch?
So what percentage goes back? Once again, it depends on so many factors. What's the gear? What's the size? What's the temperature of the water? What's the type of crop? It's on a case-by-case basis at the moment. In terms of, what was the second part, Robin?
The second part was, does the second round of financing include,
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So the intention is, what we've kicked off, because we're fairly small, is we call it a minimum viable deployment. What's the minimum amount that a farmer can actually take on and use it incrementally and makes a difference? So for an oyster farm, it might be a row of flip farm baskets, for example. And it's relatively small. It's usually between about $15,000 and $50,000 worth of combined crop infrastructure, if you like. We have through Ocean Farmr, there's a forecasting compliance module, so we just keep track of what we're doing, or what the farmer's doing on a monthly basis, and then the expectation is we don't have to wait till the end of 12 months or the growth period. It could be 6 months, it could be 3 months, it could be 9 months, somewhere in the middle. We'll probably pre-approve to many of these, or we definitely pre-approve to many of these farmers the next round. And there's an expectation that the next round will probably be 2 to 3 times that. So it might go from 50,000 to 150,000. And you might recall in the presentation that sort of we're aspirationally looking at about $400,000 a year per farmer. And so you can start to see how we can then build it up from 50 to 150 to $400,000 per year. And then you would have also noticed in the presentation that we've got, what was it, 58 farmers needing 56 million or something like that. It's around those numbers. It's about $900,000 of requirement per farmer at the moment. So we're not far off our expectation on a farmer requiring about $400,000 a year. So that's sort of how it's going to work. And each time it's the same. It's the crop and the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So it's the same concept. It's just rolling it over, new deal each time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think even to touch on the point that you picked up there a little bit, and also we were talking about it a little bit earlier, but the kind of the general feedback that I hear from the farmers is it's a no-brainer. They want to get on board. They want to grow their business. They want it to be significantly more efficient. So how much have you invested in essentially education of your app and of your product? Are you finding that people are just sort of talking amongst others and saying, hey, you need to just get onto this Ocean Farmer app? It's great and super efficient for your business.
Yeah, yeah, Robin. So what we're finding is that the ocean. Yeah. So what's exciting, what we're finding is that as we start rolling out these deals with the farm to buy in particular. So yes, farmers are getting efficiency and operational productivity out of the application itself.
Yeah.
But as we start rolling out these farm to buy deals, there is a distinct competitive advantage. The farmers that can have that use Ocean Farmer and can access this finance are going to grow faster with better gear. You know, and that's what we can say. We can already see it happening. It's happening locally in my area. I can see it happening in the US where I've been doing some sales and promotion. Is that, you know, the farms that get away and that they're always going to be ahead. You know, as Matt says, you know, they'll quickly go from being able to finance, you know, $15,000 worth of gear to 150. You know, so there's distinct competitive advantage to farmers who can use, and not just use, but become amazing Ocean Farmer farms.
Yeah, fantastic. And another question basically on the financing side, who owns the asset manager?
Matt,
yeah, that's literally, yeah.
You are the CFO.
Yeah, look, I mean, the intention after this raise, and it's the combination of this raise and the cornerstone investors, is the asset manager comes back into the Ocean Farmer team. We were originally asked not to have it as part of Ocean Farmer. Some shareholders were concerned we were going to be using shareholder funds to buy infrastructure, and we were very clear that we didn't want to. So we set it up at arm's length with the intention, always with the intention of vending it back in, but we just wanted to demonstrate through the proof of concepts, no, that wasn't going to happen. We're not using shareholder funds to fund infrastructure. That's not what we're doing. So there's an intention after we've completed this round and the cornerstone investors to vend it back into the group.
Fantastic. And Chris has asked another question here. Will the offer document show a model of a live example of returns? It won't in relation to Ocean Farmer, but I think in relation to this question, it's probably taking a look at the financing piece.
It sort of does at the moment. We could always look at bringing elements in, so we need to think about how we do that. So we'll take it on notice, Chris, I think is the easiest answer.
Fantastic. And is the app still dependent on mobile phone coverage? The Kimberley is extremely remote with very little mobile phone coverage. Can this finance model apply to pearl oyster production? Actually, we can answer that afterwards. But yeah, the mobile phone coverage piece is an interesting question.
That's a great question, because it's one of our sort of deliverables from last raise, is that we have launched a new farm application, so a new Ocean Farmer app, and it has offline functionality. So it is definitely in a better position to deliver on what you need, Kimberley, from a farmer's perspective. But yeah, that was one of the key deliverables from our last crowdfunding raise, is that we were going to launch a new app, and we've done that. And yeah, it's got heaps better, it's faster, it's got a better interface, and it's got offline capability.
Yeah, awesome, fantastic. And then the second part of that question is can this finance model apply to pearl oyster production?
Absolutely. You know, it's about working with any ocean farm and working out, again, it'll be tailored just to that operation.
Yeah, awesome. And I think this was a follow-on from the conversation that we were having previously, but Chris's next part of the question is, will an independent custodian or unit register manager be used?
I think we're getting probably too far in the detail on this one.
Yeah, we're getting very far in the detail.
Yeah. I think that one's for another time, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you, a question here from Stephen, how do you arrange crop and gear insurance? Our experience is that very, very few underwriters are prepared to take on the risk of crop and gear insurance. If they do, the premiums are out of reach. So
yeah, absolutely. You're spot on. We can't insure the whole crop, and we can't insure the whole lot of gear. It's partial insurance, and it's only on certain conditions. So over time, and the expectation, it's worthwhile thinking about this through. As we get bigger, our ability to cover this stuff on a worldwide basis, and our ability to manage that supply chain, if you like, becomes quite substantial. So we'll end up with quite a bit of buying power to start to work with insurance companies and get some of this coverage on a global basis. So at the moment, it's partial and it's only on certain elements. And in the future, we expect that to expand out as we start to grow.
Yeah, fantastic.
And it's also worth mentioning that this is what's so unique about the Farmr Buy program, is that we can keep those terms short, and we can even structure them around those major risk factors. As the example I gave in the Gulf, so a 5-month turnaround means that we can do it outside the windows of those key risks, which are hurricanes, in that area. And I think that's, again, the questions that are coming in are just validating these are questions from ocean farmers, right? So this is validating how hard it is to get finance and get insurance to actually grow their farms. With the Farm to Buy program, it is about keeping it short, and to one crop sort of rotation. And that means that, one, it's less risky for the funder, because we can, get in and get out. And also it means the farmer themselves don't need to be accountable for gear and crop for long periods of time. So the traditional finance models of lending a farmer money and them having monthly repayments, is almost debilitating. It just does not work, because these farms have fluctuating cash flow, and over a 5-year period, you're more likely to have some sort of event that affects the farm operation. So if we can progressively and sort of incrementally grow these farms, using short terms, with these funding, we're building not only and it also means that they're not using their operating cash to pay for gear and crops, which is a massive one. So we're making these farms more resilient. They can hold more cash to see them through, closures or catastrophes. And we're also, again, they can fund better, again, because they're not borrowing the money, and the crop is paying for the gear. They can invest in the best gear, the most robust gear that can see them through sort of, floods or high winds, etc. So it is. We really. I'm an ocean farmer. We're aligned with ocean farmers. The Farm to Buy, because it's not financing in a traditional sense. It's more of it's share farming. We're really aligned with the farmer in terms of making sure they do well as the funders, and we de-risk everything as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've had just one final question here from Chris, who's asked basically who handles or controls the sale of the product, the asset manager or the farmer. I know we've spent a lot of time on the farm financing specifics themselves, but I'll hand over to you guys to just cover this one.
Yeah, the farmer. So it's again important to note that the farmer knows what they're doing, and they demonstrate that. They demonstrate that through the use of the Ocean Farmer app, but we're talking about established farmers that have been doing it for years, if not long, if not longer. So they know what they're doing. They've got the established market. It's about, they're the ones that manage the sale of the product because they know best. We're just there to sort of, help them make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really come to the end of our questions, and almost perfect timing, just 4 minutes until the end. So thank you, Chris. Yeah, as just represented, thank you very much for answering all my questions. And I just wanted to thank you guys as well, and really to throw it over to you to perhaps share any further details about the business that you feel that maybe we haven't touched on in too much detail in this webinar. Over to you guys.
Matt, have you got anything to add?
No,
I know it's always a question. There's always a question that makes you think, and you think, I believe we've covered everything, but have we not? So,
I just always close with the fact that it is really exciting. Like, I'm really excited. I'm really obviously passionate about the industry. to get out. I've just traveled through the US, and I've visited Norway, but the US and Australia, and it is about solving problems I experienced as a farmer for the last couple of years. And yeah, it is super exciting, you know, like tens of millions of dollars in leads in the pipeline, farmers coming to me and saying, hey, this is going to change the way we farm. It's amazing that we can solve this problem. Like it is a really exciting. Ocean Farmr is a really exciting time. It's got impact. It's got huge potential for growth. And yeah, I'm looking forward to growing these farms, like just amazing, passionate farmers all over the world. You know, we can get behind them and help them grow more amazing seafood. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
We're already doing it, and I'm looking forward to doing more of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Fantastic. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure to sit down with you, and really congratulations, having done a raise previously and gone on and used those funds to execute what you said you were going to do, and then coming back with a business that's just much more established. And to me, I mean, there's just the excitement has really evolved with time that's passed in this industry and in this space, and you're so much closer to it. So that's probably a blanket statement that you're very used to hearing, but it probably doesn't even cover half of it. So guys, I'm super excited to be working together and launching your investment offer the week after next. For everybody who's here, we will be sending around a recording and that link so you can express interest to invest and be kept in the loop with exactly when you can receive that early investment offer access and make your investment.
Fantastic. Thanks, Robin. Thanks, everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.